US has seized the Russian-flagged tanker MV Bella 1 in the North Atlantic after it attempted to evade America's partial blockade of Venezuela's energy exports. US European Command announced that the Department of Justice and Homeland Security executed the seizure pursuant to a federal court warrant, with US CGC Monroe tracking and intercepting the vessel. As this news came just after a few minutes, in a post on X, Hegseth said, "The blockade of sanctioned and illicit Venezuelan oil remains in full effect anywhere in the world." He later shared a similar message alongside a video of the US seizing a second tanker linked to Venezuela in the Caribbean Sea. President Donald Trump has won the first direct naval confrontation with Russia since Maduro's capture on January 3rd. The dramatic operation marks the successful enforcement of Trump's Venezuela strategy, transforming what began as a regime change operation into a definitive assertion of American hemispheric dominance. The Bella 1, carrying 2 million barrels of sanctioned Venezuelan crude, represents Moscow's failed challenge to US naval supremacy. This seizure deepens the Washington-Moscow confrontation, with both nuclear powers now operating military assets in direct competition. The operation's location in the North Atlantic, far from Venezuelan waters, demonstrates the unprecedented scope of US enforcement jurisdiction. Since late December 2025, the US Navy has maintained a partial blockade of Venezuela's primary oil export terminals, seizing multiple tankers and conducting over 30 airstrikes on drug smuggling vessels linked to Maduro's regime. The Bella 1 attempted sophisticated evasion, disabling its AIS transponder, taking circuitous southern Caribbean routes, and coordinating with Russian naval intelligence from Venezuela's La Guaira base. Russia framed the mission as defending sovereign Venezuelan commerce against piratical American aggression. Moscow dispatched the tanker under the Russian International Register of Shipping as a direct challenge to what Russia calls its privileged sphere of influence in Latin America. The US response was surgical and overwhelming. US CGC Munro, a Legend-class national security cutter, tracked the Bella 1 across thousands of miles from the Caribbean to the North Atlantic. The seizure was executed under a federal warrant for sanctions violations, demonstrating airtight legal authority and operational precision. This success validates Trump's strategy of combining naval interdiction with Maduro's $50 million bounty and capture, economically strangling the regime while avoiding full-scale invasion. Russia maintains significant military assets in Venezuela: S-400 systems, Su-35 jets, and 200 Wagner contractors, despite Maduro's removal. The US executed regardless. Global markets reacted dramatically. Brent crude surged 4% to $82 per barrel before stabilizing as traders absorbed US enforcement success. The operation proves Trump's blockade is not bluff, but enforceable law backed by overwhelming naval power. Russia's failure to protect its tanker exposes the limits of Moscow's power projection in America's hemisphere, despite billions invested in Venezuelan military basing. The Bella 1 seizure represents the most significant enforcement of the Monroe Doctrine since the Cuban Missile Crisis. For the first time since 1962, America has intercepted and seized a Russian vessel challenging US supremacy within 2,000 miles of continental territory. The implications are seismic. First, Russia loses its primary Latin American foothold. Second, China faces similar tanker interdiction risks. Third, global energy markets accept US blockade pricing. Fourth, Monroe Doctrine returns as active policy. President Trump has answered the defining question of his second term. America will reassert unchallenged dominance in its hemisphere. Russia cannot contest US power 90 miles from Florida. The 21st century Monroe Doctrine is no longer theory. It's Coast Guard cutters seizing tankers in the North Atlantic,